Kia ora tātou. I've been involved in politics and been a member of the Labour Party all my life. In fact, I'm still a life member of the Labour Party. Not that the hierarchy of the Labour Party thinks I'm still alive, but let me say I am. Going back to the early days when you have Dobson Paikia, you had Maturata, you had the movers and shakers of the Maori world, with only the four Maori electorates: Southern, Northern, Eastern and Western Maori. And it was during that time that we used to go on the horseback and raise funds and have hangis and fundraise for the Labour Party, because there are only two. There are only two movements then. That you either belong to the Ratana Church or you belong to the Labour Party, or both. So that was the landscape that I was born into. And what made me go into politics was when I saw our whenua being threatened to be taken away and to be confiscated or alienated to the local authority because of our elders' inability to pay the rates. And they were wondering what this was all about. Their tupuna land, they were asked to pay the rates, otherwise the council would take the land off them. And they just couldn't reconcile why and this threat, in that there was no water, there was no electricity, there were no roads. We lived in a traditional Maori coastal village at Matauri Bay. Our school was called a Matauri Whakarara Native School, and I think that gives you some sort of idea the kind of environment that we were in. But to cut a long story short, I ended up as the Māori Vice President, Senior Vice President of the Labour Party over many years, and eventually stood for Parliament, became the Member of Parliament for the Taitokoro, and became the Minister of Māori Affairs and the other associate portfolios that I had under the Labour government led by Helen Clark. So that was my journey into the House of Representatives. And I've got to say now that I look back on it, on the events, and I look back at the changes that was made then, it certainly were profound and interesting. And getting back to where I am now, and the issues that are facing our community, and I'm talking about Northland, and I've decided in this, for all these years, to switch to the general role from the Maori role, which I have been on for ever since I was able to vote. And people have asked me why, and yet I listened to some others and I found out they've done the same thing also. Because without having confidence and having some value in who you're voting for and the value of your vote, if you have no confidence in its outcome or its influence on what you believe should be the changes, notwithstanding the issues and the problems that we're having in New Zealand, but specifically in the regions, and then you listen to people talking about splitting up and changing our constitution in the way that the country is governed. And I've asked the question of those architects, can you explain to me, what does that actually mean on the ground? What are you talking about? Because we've heard the debate in about co-governance internationally in other countries. And if you have a look at what transpired there, I have grave concerns about really the clarity of what that means, because what I see is constitutional change in our present system. And I'm not convinced that in fact it'll be in the interest of our country, not in the interest of Māori, but in the interest of all our people that live in Aotearoa and generations to come. I don't think that we have the mandate and the authority to lock them into that type of constitutional change without absolute clarity. See, it's just like the talking about like getting rid of the Treaty of Waitangi. What do you replace it with? And all the implications that go with it. what do you actually replace it with? So that is a debate. That is a corridor and a conversation that must be had by all New Zealanders before any decision is made. And quite frankly, I think that there are more important issues right now for New Zealand and our race relations. I think that on the ground, I was always interested about the audience of our people being captured by these name changes. Name changes. We have waka kotai. We have whatuora. We have all these institutions and these places are going to, we're going to change their names. Well, what does it really change? Waka kotahi means that we're all in the same pothole together. Okay? Right? I mean, whatuora. We're all sleeping in, there's not a hospital empty bed. We've got big problems there. Changing the bloody name ain't going to make any difference. One squeak, in fact, it might put us backwards. So people occupy their times by this type of humbug conversation that leads us nowhere. And what I've got to say about Jones, right? I've told him to smile sometimes and be photogenic. But he said, listen, there are plenty of members of parliament and candidates that are smiling all the time, in the papers every day, looking beautiful, dressed up. What do they deliver? Therein is the question for the people of Northland. And I remember profoundly when he got nearly booted out, when the opposition got up and questioned him about what he was spending in Northland from the Provincial Growth Fund. Right? And the opposition that questioned him, they were members of Parliament for Northland. They were opposition members of Parliament. And Jones said, I make no apologies. It's time we put aside the PC aspect of politics and put our vote where we've got confidence, where you have people that know how to row the waka, turn it around and go in the right direction. I've known Winston personally and I've known Shane personally. I know his father, I know his family. When I was Parliament, it was amazing enough. I've had texts from Winston to say, how are you going? And I've met him several times, both him and Jan. And of course, I'm very, very close to Shane's family with his wife and the whole whānau and hapu. Winston's got a track record for really saying it how it is and exposing a lot of, and very high profile, I won't say conspiracy, but influences that really have never been exposed. Have never been exposed. And look, you can't be in the Parliament, and I've got to hand it to him. I mean, for those years, like, you've either got to be a Houdini or you've got to have a tough skin. I think that we need some wisdom there. Somebody who's gone through walked the university, gone through the university of life, walked through the journey of life. And there's not many that you can choose from. I think that Jacinda was very lucky. She was very, very fortunate in having an old, wise member of Parliament and a minister beside her in Winston Peters in the first instance. Because I could see her vulnerability, and I could see the vulnerability of her new members, right? They really wasn't case-hardened about the debate and the pictures in the House when you've got question time. But Winston was there, and I could see that she was confident that she had somebody who had the wisdom and the experience in terms of really half answering the hard questions that the Prime Minister was having difficulty with. Did they appreciate his contribution? Well, I've been hearing some comments after there was a big landslide just for the Labour and the setting up the Labour government, and there was not a mention that of Winston's contribution to the coalition that allowed Shane to actually do the mahi, do the work here in Northland. And I mean, the evidence is here. The evidence is here. There's no doubt about it. So people have got a choice. Same old, same old, same old. Don't blame the guy. Don't blame whoever they put in there, because they're the ones that voted for them. Don't blame them, right? If they find that these potholes and all this infrastructure stuff that has been set up are just disappearing into the ether, well, right? Don't blame them. You know, I've always kept my vote very secret, because what is the purpose of going into a booth where nobody can see what you're doing and who you're voting for if you're going to start telling people who you're voting for? I think that whoever's listening, whoever's watching this extraterrestrial broadcast that we're talking about now, I think perhaps they can analyse that by our conversation and our wairua in this conversation, and I'll be casting my vote according to the whakapapa that I've been sharing with you. The wind is not always behind you when you're in politics. You've got to be prepared that when you've got a headwind, head-on, or side-on wind, that you're prepared to actually change the vision or change the direction of your waka. If you don't, there's only one place, and that's where the Titanic is right now.